Welcome back to the shop today, everybody. It is a beautiful early morning, and I wanted to do this video for a while. I want to go over the MyPlasm software that I run for my CNC, so let's get to it. So the reason for this video is basically, I've been wanting to make this video for a while. In regards to the MyPlasm software that I am now running on my CNC. That's the kind of the main reason. But the second reason is I've had a lot of guys ask me for a little bit more of an update on Facebook pages and stuff like that. And just to go over kind of what I've learned. There's not a lot of videos out there on this program. And I think that makes it feel risky for some people. I'm in no way, shape, or form sponsored by Proma Electronica, who supplies the MyPlasm software. However, I would love that. I got some new projects coming down the pipe where I could use another controller board. But that being said, I really love this software. Some would say it doesn't have as many, little tricks and things to do and all this kind of stuff, but you don't need half that stuff. And the problem I faced is that when I was using Mach 3, it felt like I needed to be able to code to get that to work and work well. I had to produce the G code. That was a big one. Now, not that that was that hard. I used Fusion 360 for a lot of my drafting and stuff like that. And with that, you can do the CAM setup, computer-aided machining, in there to develop the G code and then put that into the Mach 3 software and use it. This, however, I can run this off of DXFs. So when I'm done drawing out my said part or sign or image, whatever you're working on, in Fusion 360, you export that as a DXF, just a sketch. You don't even need the body or anything like that. You just export the sketch as a DXF, fire that into here, and away it goes. It does that all for you. Simplifies it like crazy, and that's what I really love. Because I'm not, if you were to ask me, 3 or 4 years ago, if I would ever have a piece of machinery that is operated by a computer that I built myself, that's ridiculous. I would have never have thought I could do it. But if I can do it, you guys can do it, and this software definitely helps. So I'm just going to do a basic overview of the software. It's not going to be any lengthy video or anything like that, I don't think. It's going to be a quick overview of what you can expect. And then maybe if you guys like it, I'll keep, diving a little deeper into it. So I'll turn you around here. I don't know how to do the screen sharing thing. Again, guys, I don't do computers. I'm figuring this all out as I go. So I'm just going to point the camera at it. Hopefully I can get a good enough angle you can see. And let's take a look at it. All right, so when you open, I'm not going to go through the downloading of the program and stuff like that. And if somebody needs a video like that, I can put one together. But basically, when you open up your MyPlasm, I guess I can show you what the icon looks like here. It's this icon right here. And so when you open up MyPlasm, this is the page it'll bring you to. And we'll just kind of go over the basics. And where the manual will get you to start is up here in configuration. Configuration will show you a page like this. This is where you kind of figure out your steps on your drivers for your stepper motors. And if you're running a secondary motor on the Y, in this case I am, so that's why I have this selected. There's a couple other stuff here like for rotary and not active if you're using just one motor, etc., etc. And the manual goes into decent detail with all that. The main questions I was actually getting on Facebook was actually about the plasma hookup and stuff like that. Basically, you have the option to do a 1-to-1, 20-to-1, 50-to-1, and the manual kind of shows you which pins you need off of the torch height control for that. And then you would need to look at the manual for your plasma cutter to kind of, have that all work together as one. Sorry, I'm gonna move my camera here a little bit. I have a pretty janky setup here right now. So once you kind of got this figured out, and plus it's kind of nice, this thing actually shows you all the lights, these blue lights. This matches your controller board that will be in your control box. And so these lights show you, if these are red, something's wrong, which I really love those indicator lights, because if something is not functioning, I go to this page, and this tells me, oh, I have a problem with a limit switch, or I have a problem with a driver, and then it narrows it down to for a guy to actually be able to, you know, like find the problem and see what's going on. So, that's kind of the basics here of this one. This is under the electronics tab. Then you have the machines tab. Again, this is all for setup. So moving parameters. This is where you set your speed, not your cutting speed, guys. This is where you set the machine speed. So when you are free moving your machine around, these are the speeds that it'll go. Well, sorry, you have your maximum speed here. So that's how fast this thing will be able to travel. This thing will not go past, in my case, 600 inches per minute, which I'll never hit that. That's just where my motors were topping out. And then you have your hand XY speed limit. So this is what I have it set at for when I free move. And then my safety speed is 40 and acceleration is 15. And that acceleration / ramp, that's when that thing kind of fires up. It doesn't just go on and then travel. It ramps up to that speed, just that way you don't have your machine bouncing around too aggressively. I don't know, there's probably a lot of fancier terms a guy can use to explain this, but that's kind of what I've figured out. Next, you have your soft limits. This I highly recommend. Highly recommend. Especially if guys aren't running limit switches, because yes, there are guys out there who don't run limit switches. So this is kind of the rough size of your table. In my case, mine's a 2 foot by 4 foot table. So I have a 23.5 and then 47.25 ish. Now I do that just to keep away from the edges of my table, so that way I don't run off the edge of the table and stay within the water pan. And I have 13 inches on my Z-axis because that's how much my Z-axis travels. So when that thing goes from 0, which is the detection of the material, and travels up, that will stop at 13 inches as it travels upward. We then have our XY gear parameters. So this would be the inches it travels per revolution of the motor. And this will all determine on what you have, especially if you have a gear reduction. For me, I have a direct drive with a gear rack and pinion, but this is the rotation the motor needs to spin to move. Sorry, this is the inches that the machine moves per one rotation of the motor. Then we got the gear, the Z moving. This is also set up, this will be differently for everybody because of if you're using a ball screw like I am, it depends on your ball screw, pitch, and all that jazz. It's just basically letting the machine know if the motor turns once, it moves this far. That's how it kind of judges the accuracy of the machine. This you don't really need to worry about unless you're doing some crazy stuff, and this is the rotary gear. That'll be for if you're doing a rotary axis. Then we got our functions tab. So this is pretty basic. You got your torch height ohmic sensor. I do not have a torch with ohmic, but if I did, I would select that. And that being said, there is some ports that I'm not using because I don't have this hooked up. Ohmic sensing is when the tip of the torch makes contact with the material, creates a circuit, kind of like a switch. The torch is the switch. So when it touches material, it instantly tells it that, oh, I've detected material. This is 0. I'm zeroed out. And then the machine will back off to your cutting height. I have a floating head switch, which does relatively the same thing. It's just not as, in my opinion, not as accurate. So my my torch will go down, it'll push on a spring, and it'll kind of go down a little extra bit, hit a switch, and then raise up to give me my 0. And so, yeah. Floating head switch. I plan on running both of these at some point, and as soon as I find a machine torch with ohmic sensing that works with a prime weld cut 60, I plan on purchasing that. And if any of you guys know, please let me know, because I would really appreciate that. And this is just detection speed, switch correction, and ohmic correction. Ohmic correction doesn't mean anything because I'm not using it. And switch detection in inches. So my switch needs to come down an inch, 1.7 inches when it hits the switch, and it'll back up. Once the switch is triggered, it'll back up that 1.7 inches, and that gives me the I forget what height I have it set at right now, but the like 4 or 5 millimeters of clearance between the torch tip and the material. And that measurement is derived from kind of how my torch has been mounted to the Z-axis. Now I really like this this park function. I want to mess around with this more. I don't have any more settings in here, but when I hit F1 on my keyboard, X-axis goes to 0, Y goes to 23, and Z goes to max. So what that'll do is that'll send my machine, it'll raise my Z all the way up, so the torch is completely out of the way. It'll move the X all the way to the left of the machine, and it'll send my Y-axis all the way down, so my machine ends up in the far left corner of the machine. I don't need to jog it out of the way. I can just hit F1 and it'll do that for me. So it's pretty nice, and you can have multiple setups here in where you can have different park functions. I plan on utilizing that because sometimes when I'm loading material, taking material off, I need those things, I need that torch away from me. So I mean, in my head, I would do this one goes to the left corner, this one to the right. You could do the F3 would be center back. You can adjust this to wherever you need that thing to be parked. And you could even, technically, you could even do one for your home. Like if there's a spot that you always start cutting from, you could set this. I always set it where I home the machine, so I would never actually use that. But pretty cool functions. We have special down here. You should not have to do anything in here unless you know what you're doing. This is for some oddball parameters. It keeps track of some stuff, like it's got a piercing count, cutting count time in minutes. That's kind of cool. Kind of just like a machine clock, right? Like you can kind of see what's going on. That's pretty impressive. I actually didn't know I put that many pierces on here. I know it's probably not much for some, but for a small machine like mine, the 5,573 is actually more than I anticipated. But anyways, and so yeah, there's some internal switches and stuff. There's some stuff here for some scribes and stuff like that. And there's some stuff that I want to mess around with in here yet when I'm a little bit more educated, because I do want to add a scribe to my machine at some point in life. But anywho, so that's kind of the functions tab. Software, this is, you really don't need much in here except select if you're doing imperial, inches, or metric, and your language. There's a handful of languages here. And yeah, there's some other stuff. I think there's a manual in here too, but you can restore all the default settings, restore previous configurations, create file for Perform Electronica support. So I mean, basically you can kind of send data reports if there's an issue. But that's where you'll start, guys. These first 3 tabs, the electronics, the machine, and the function, you'll spend a lot of time in there when you're setting your machine up. And that's just to get the machine kind of functioning as it should. Now, this is your main screen. Here is the parameters that your machine is at. It'll be different for every single person. So what you can do is you can start making files. So I have one here. I'm still messing around with some 1/4 inch stuff. So as I dial it in, I changed the name of my file. But this is the one I use the most of, 16 gauge mild steel, 35 amps. So when I select that, I'll let it load here for a second. Yeah, so I don't know if you saw that, but these numbers changed. So I have it cutting at 108 inches per minute, and actually I could probably speed that up a little bit. Cutting speed 2, so this is when it gets to a certain spot where it's too, either a really tight corner or a really small hole, it'll go down to a secondary speed. I have this really low. I don't know why I have it that low, but that's just where I have it. It seems to be working. Cutting height, 0.06 of an inch. So that's how high the torch will come up off of the material, or should come off the material. Cutting height, THC. So this is gonna read your arc voltage. And as it drops or goes above 72, it'll raise and lower the Z-axis. I did struggle with this a little bit, and I still do from time to time. There is a really nice spot in the manual that you can go to that explains how to do a test cut, and then you watch up here where it says arc, and there's 3 dashes and a V. You do a test cut where you just use a space bar to fire the machine, and then manually use the arrows to draw the torch across the machine or the material. And then this will actually show your arc voltage when the torch height is off. And you can kind of see what the average is. And what I usually do is I videotape it. I'll throw my camera up much like you're watching this now. And then I can go back and slow it down and find out what the highest point was. That's the number I throw in here to start with, kind of a baseline, and then I adjust it as I go. Piercing height is exactly that. It goes to 0.2 of an inch to pierce. This definitely could be tighter. I really need to adjust some of this. Piercing time, so this is 600 milliseconds. That thing will, once the torch fires, it'll stay put for 600 milliseconds and then continue on its cut, just to make sure it goes through its material. And the floating head height is 1.5 inches. So that's the height that it'll go to. It'll go to 1.5 inches above the material when it needs to, free travel. So just going back up to here. So this is the kind of manual control board. You can move the machine with these arrows, up, down, left, right, yada, yada, yada. Z, up and down. You can also use your keyboard arrows, which, let's be honest, guys, you're going to do that more often. It's just easier. And I have a cordless keyboard, so now I can actually walk to my machine and kind of mess around there. You have your references. The main one you're going to use is this one here, XYZ. So what I normally do is I'll move the machine roughly to its home position, which is the front left corner of my machine. Again, different machines will vary. And when you hit that button, your machine is going to move towards its hard limits or its limit switches, and gently touch off and square up the machine, and then that is your ground zero. That is where your corner material should start. This just gives you all the top block here, gives you all the information, just kind of where your machine is. There is a torch emblem here. It's kind of hard to see. I'll see if I can bring that in. Let me see here. So you can kind of see it there. I can't go much lower. I should actually try here. So now I have it all the way down until it's pushing my floating head switch, and that is the image you'll see. So basically it has detected the material and it'll back up now. And this is kind of nice to see. It just kind of shows you where the torch is at all times. It's really nice. So that's kind of the basics of the main page here. Really not much to it. When you are loading, that's probably another good question, is when you're loading DXFs to cut, you have this icon right here. It looks like a couple of pages here with an arrow. And when you open that, we'll give this a minute to open here, you get this screen. And this screen is basically your loading screen. So, and I call it my nesting screen, to be honest. I'll see if I can explode this up so you guys can see it better. And you can select from your folders from the computer. So if you have kind of a file bank of all your DXFs and stuff like that, you can select them from here. I have a bunch of stuff. Like I have one folder that's named signs. I have another one that's named tools, things like that. And when I'll just do this baffle plate that I'm working on. So you select a file that you want. It'll give you a small image here so you can make sure what image you are picking up. You go to this green arrow here and you can load it up. So there you go. No G code needed. You're just putting a DXF in here. And if you want multiples, you use the arrow with the plus, and you can sit there and you can load this thing up with whatever you want. It's pretty cool, and it gives you an opportunity to kind of nest things together. Now, it's not the best nesting program, but if you are a guy like me starting out, this is awesome, because using Mach 3, you needed to basically start over, like you needed a whole nother program to do that for you. And it kind of drove me nuts, because I was like, well, cutting one piece at a time doesn't make sense. I wasted a lot of material. Here you can move things around. You can even select things and get rid of them. Like if there's a line that you don't want cut, you can delete it and get rid of those pieces because you just don't need it. Like these lines, these were a mistake. These were a construction line in my drawing. And I can just select them and delete them, and done deal. You know what I mean? Like you can do a minimal editing in here, but you can delete lines, not cut certain pieces, etc., etc. So yeah, that's how you put them in here. Here you got some tools up here, basically an undo tool. This one is just Control C, Control V, so copy and paste. You have the disable, so you can disable certain functions. So if I click this line and hit disable, it'll actually not cut that line or that certain cut path. We have delete. That is exactly what it is. You can select stuff and delete it. This I actually don't know what this is. When you can just square, you can just select it like anything else. Yeah, I'm not sure what that does. Anyway, and then we have a scale function. I really like using this because a lot of times there's some DXFs I make that somebody wants either bigger or smaller, but I don't have to redraw it. I don't have to go do it again. I can literally just tell it what I need it to do. And I don't need to use, like you can scale it. So if it's 2 times bigger, you can make it 2 times bigger. So we could just, or if you needed to just do the X or the Y, you can do that as well. You can switch it to inch or millimeters, and it will, and I shouldn't say X and or Y, you do one or the other. So if I change this one to 3, see, it moves the pieces that I selected and it made them bigger, which are these items here. I didn't have this one selected because I told it not to. So you can scale up your project. You have your turns, you can flip. This helps a lot with, and you can mirror it. You can flip it upside down. So that helps you kind of organize your sheet with different pieces, because there's a lot of signs that I'll cut upside down because it just covers more sheet and saves waste and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's a nice ability to have. Now the one thing that I don't have, let me try to get this back here. I'll figure that out later. The one thing I don't like, or shouldn't say don't like, because I do like this, but the one thing I wish it had was the ability to grab the image and just rotate it manually. Because here with these items here, these flips, it's always 180 degree flip. Like it's never, I can't take this corner and rotate and pivot it on this corner and like put this square at an angle. You know what I mean? Like I can't twist it. There'll always be a straight line. In this case, being a rectangle, it'll always be in this orientation or straight up and down. It'll never be angled. And there's times where I've really wanted to do that because I could have saved another couple inches of material. And just like everybody else, you know, I'm cheap. I don't like wasting material. We got our use minicam. This basically is just your offsets. So this is your offset of your kerf width. Again, there's a good
good studying the manual on how to measure that. Mine happens to be very close to 0.055. I think I'm actually a little thicker than that, but that's what I've been running with, and I've had good success. Lead ins and lead outs. So you can actually adjust the size of the lead ins, and you can put the lead outs, or because lead ins start cutting your material, and lead outs finish cutting your material. So, I should go back to this. Outside or inside. Now this is something that gets confusing to some people. Outside is outside of a cut, inside is inside of a cut. Sometimes when you're doing signs, this gets a little janky because the program is tough to, it struggles to see sometimes when you have, let's say, letters on the inside of a square. It wants to cut the outside of the square, but it wants to cut the inside of the letters, which would put the lead-in cuts on your sheet. So you got to play around with that sometimes and keep note of it. Here's this. This is the sequence, and this sequence is kind of how to set up your, where is it cutting from. I'm still playing with this a little bit because it doesn't quite make sense to me. Because right now, technically, it'll start in this bottom left corner where my home is. And as you scale this up, depends on how dominant the up and down is versus the side to side. So if you have this whole sheet filled with stuff to cut, and you have this thing all the way over to the edge, it'll start in this corner and it'll start cutting stuff this way, and then it'll start cutting stuff this way. Like it'll start from this corner and move up, and so it'll kind of spread itself out. It's a little hard to play with because sometimes it's not cutting things in an orientation that you would like. It'll still cut the signs in a good orientation, but if you want this part cut and then this part and then this part, it's a little bit weird to figure out, but you can kind of figure it out. And you can disable it, and you can kind of select which ones you want to cut and stuff like that. Now, if you don't use that mini cam setup, you can do a sequence. And so let me see if I can get another part in here. I'll just do the same part. You'll see that every little pierce and cut is numbered, and it'll go from 0 to, in this case, 12. So if I hit that little hand, it shows you the path that it's taking. And if you don't use Minicam, it's not picking up things like internal cuts or exterior cuts. So it wants to start here. So this 0 is down here. And what that's going to do is cut this outline first. I do not want that. That is the last thing I want cut. I want all these internal pieces cut first. So what I can do is, once with that selected and it shows 0 here, I can go and click this this button here, and this will show my number 1. Why is this showing 2? Hold on a second. Yeah, and you can kind of just go through, and you can actually select, and you can pick the orientation in which these pieces want to cut. It's a pretty sweet system. There you go. So it'll start. Where is it going to start here? I can't see. Oh, it's because these lines are here. So it's going to cut this first as a 0. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. So you can kind of select your cut paths and what you want first if you are struggling with some of the Minicam setup. But it is fairly simple, guys. It's not rocket science. You can save these things here, and if you rescale an image in this screen, you can save it again. So if it's something that, oh, I want this at 4 inches wide, but I also want it at 6, you can save it in here as both of those, so you don't need to go redraw it up, which is a really nice feature. I love the idea of having this red dotted line. I've had a couple guys ask me what that is. Now, what that line is my outline of my table. This is where my soft limits are. So when I'm nesting, quote unquote, nesting a project or a bunch of pieces, I need to keep it within this dotted line. And if I go over that dotted line, it turns red, solid red, and you know that you've exceeded the boundaries of your table. So that's been kind of nice. It tells me where my table is at all times, just for nesting and stuff like that. So we'll get out of here. So this is that's kind of a basic overview, guys. I don't know if this is that awesome to you guys, but I figured I would do a little bit of an overview. Just, yeah, there's not many videos out there, and I wanted to do more because I really enjoy it. It's worked really, really well for me. Especially if you're not a computer savvy as I am, it definitely helped me a lot. It was worth the money. That was what scared me the first time, is the amount of money it was going to cost. And to be honest, knowing what I know now and looking at more CNC machines and stuff like that, it is still cheap. It is not expensive. It's more expensive than Mach 3, yes, but man, what you get with I think it's $450 US, something like that. Like Mach 3 doesn't come standard with torch height control. That is all external add-ons, and you got to code everything to make it work. This comes with the controller board. This comes with the torch height module. Very good instructions. I mean, there's a little bit of a disconnect because of the language barrier. Proma Electronica is in Poland. I actually ordered my system directly from him. I wanted to make sure that he was the one that got my support. I'm just like that. He responded to my emails. Customer service was great. And to be honest, I haven't needed the customer service very much because it's been working. And again, if I can figure it out, you guys can too. But that's where I'm going to leave this one today, guys. Thanks for stopping by. I really appreciate it. And if you guys need more information on this, let me know in the comments. Yeah, let me know what you want to see, and maybe I'll do some deeper dives into this if this is something you guys want. So I'll see you on the next one. See ya!